Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go over this really good story that was sent from a subscriber. This is from a guy, he's 53 years old, from Australia, and he's going to share his story of how he started off in life as the strong, masculine, alpha type of guy who was on his grind, on his purpose, to eventually doing what a lot of guys do, settling down and turning into the exact opposite of what he started off in life, married for the wrong reasons, the kids, all that, became a beta, essentially, these are his own words, and how that impacted his marriage and everything, to eventually his wife ending up leaving him. And now you're going to see how that alpha that was always there, that strong masculine guy, is now back. And this guy is now on his purpose, on his grind, doing great. But he made a lot of mistakes along the way, a lot of guys do, which I'm going to point out. And he's doing this to help teach guys this, that even though you mess up, you can turn things around and get back to the guy you once were when you're younger, and have great things going for you, even if you're older, in your 50s and all that. And I want to point out, guys, there's definitely important lessons here about how obviously a guy needs to stay on his grind, on his purpose, always. Even if he does settle down and get married and all that, which, my opinion on that. You can't ever go off your purpose, off your grind. You got to keep being that strong, masculine guy you always were. Also, how if a guy stops doing that, it'll generally turn off the women that were attracted to him in the first place for being that way. And how a lot of women, even if you've done things right forever, how easily they can pick up and just leave you like that and not give a shit how much of a good husband you were, good father, provider, the second they just don't feel like you're worth it anymore. A lot of important lessons, and of course, how you can get it all back. So it's a long one, guys, as you can obviously see, so I'm going to keep the comments minimum, but I think you'll definitely enjoy this here. He says, hello, SSM. I stumbled upon your videos during the aftermath of a 21-year relationship, and they have been a great help. I hope to pay it forward with my own story. It has been split into 4 parts. Number 1, Alpha in the making. Number 2, Alpha settles down. Number 3, Alpha becomes beta. And number 4, Alpha redemption. He says, in the Alpha in the making, he says, good day from Australia. I grew up in a house with both parents and 2 brothers. My dad was always at work, so my mother was the disciplinarian. She regularly beat the crap out of us. I always got straight A's and didn't have many other school activities. As a small, nerdy kid, I was bullied at school, and my time there was pretty miserable. When I was 15, my mother died from a medical complication, leaving my father with 3 boys to raise alone. The next year was pretty much a blur, but I buried myself in schoolwork to avoid dealing with all the grief. Because Dad was at work a lot, we pretty much raised ourselves, with me taking on the bulk of the workload at home. Dad hired a housekeeper to help out a few days a week. Gradually, I came out of my mother's shadow. So, mom's gone and dad's working, so you gotta look after your brothers and essentially become a man real quick. At 16, I started martial arts, and it helped me immensely. The structure, discipline, and skills that I developed gave me loads of confidence. My last couple of years of school were great. I had more friends, and the girls started to notice me. At our final school dance before graduation, I spent the night dancing with 2 girls and had a blast. That martial arts did it, man. I mean, aside from the fact that obviously you had to become a man real quick and grow up because your dad was gone, you had to take care of your brothers and all that. But the martial arts gave you the confidence. I recommend all guys train in martial arts at least a year of their lives to learn some basic skills that will really help you out. And that martial arts, depending on what you want, you have to shop around. In my opinion, the best ones are Krav Maga, boxing, or kickboxing, because they're more street-oriented than compared to other ones that are more sport-oriented. I'm sure people will debate me on this, and that's fine. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is good for ground defense and all that, but the point is, it's good for discipline, confidence, and helps you really know that you can whoop some ass if you need be. It makes you feel a lot better, and it'll affect all other areas of your lives in a positive way. After school, I went to university and stopped up with my martial arts training. Stepped up my martial arts training. I was now super fit and a good fighter. This is when I got my first black belt. I paid my way through school by teaching martial arts and picking up side jobs. After university, I got a full-time job, moved out of my home into a cheap apartment in a rough part of town. I had to walk past a couple of pubs on my way to home from work, so it was impossible to avoid fights, especially on Friday nights. Well, if you're that good that you're actually teaching martial arts, you obviously know what the hell you're doing, and if you're in top shape. I never recommend going looking for fights, but it's good to know you can handle yourself. But most of the aggressors were drunk, so they were pretty easy to deal with. Yeah, fighting drunks is hilarious. These guys throw the most ridiculous haymakers. You can see the punches coming a mile away. They'll slip and fall on their ass like that. But they don't feel anything when you punch them, I might add. About this time, I changed martial arts styles and got another black belt. A couple years later, I was invited to compete overseas in a tournament in South Korea, and ended up winning my event. I gave the trophy to my dad because he paid for all the martial arts lessons. He really told me how much he appreciated the gesture. So this is a guy on his grind, on his purpose, the martial arts, and in school and all that. Exactly what you young guys to be doing. But here's the deal, guys. The grind never stops. The purpose, the self-improvement never stops. There's always a new mountain to climb and something new to achieve. And yes, there are roadblocks in life. And if you do a family, yes, you obviously got to take care of your family and kids, but it doesn't mean you stop. During this time, I was always on my grind and never paid much attention to girls. I hooked up a few times, but rarely dated a girl for more than a few months, or a few weeks. Thinking back, I missed a lot of opportunities to hook up because I missed the cues and flirts that girls were giving me. Girls had to be pretty obvious that they were interested in me for me to take note. And he says they still do. During my 20s, I changed jobs a couple of times and bought a small investment property. At 29, I became unemployed and was at a loss as to what to do next. I was a qualified computer programmer and experienced computer technician, so it was easy to pick up contracts to pay the bills, but I had a lot of spare time, so I decided to go back to school. Keep in mind that it was in the 90s, so I had never heard of red pill, blue pill, alpha, beta male stuff. When I saw your videos, I realized I was acting alpha without even knowing it. You were on your grind, you're on your purpose, you're taking charge, you're being a freaking man. He says, my dad was a hard worker and a straight talker, so I just followed his example. I never took crap from anyone, and my martial arts background let me walk into a room full of people and know that nobody there could hurt me. If anyone caused me too much hassle or aggravation, I just cut them out of my life and moved on. After some more research, I think I'm more of a Sigma personality rather than Alpha, but I really don't give a crap. It's a lot of psychobabble label, it won't affect how I live my life. Bottom line is, dude, you were masculine, you were strong, you were on your purpose. You were a guy that other guys could look up to and respect. End of story. And notice he said he got that from his dad. This is why it's so important that young guys have that masculine presence in their life. And I'm emphasizing masculine presence, not just some sadly typical guy nowadays who doesn't know what the hell he's doing, is shy and timid and doesn't speak up and doesn't stand up for himself and is a total doormat and all that and doesn't go after what he wants and he's physically weak. That's not the example I want. I want old school masculinity to give examples to the young guys out there because they need it more than ever. And if the dad isn't around, unfortunately, then grandfather, godfather, uncle, older cousin, older brother, some want to look up to. And hence he lived by the old school examples his father had. This is good. He says, while I was at school, back to school, this was the first time I went to university and I studied science and computer subjects. The second time I studied classics and history. I learned Greek and Latin and took as many military history subjects as were available. I studied purely for the pleasure of learning, picking subjects that interested me rather than for career. Education in Australia is relatively cheap compared to the US, so the student debt was manageable. At the back of my mind, I was thinking about the school would be full of 20-year-old girls that I could hook up with, and there were. I was experienced enough to know how to counter their silly games and more mature than the usual boys that they were hooking up with. So there wasn't a whole lot of competition. Going to school as a 30-year-old was great fun. Yeah, I bet you had a lot of fun, but we're going to see in a moment he had a little too much fun. While I was at school, a fellow student we call M needed a place to stay, so I offered him my spare room. On moving day, M's brother and sister helped him shift all his gear into my place, and afterwards I made a move on his sister. We'll call her S. It wasn't long before we were dating and hooking up regularly. She was a couple of years younger than me. I was always pretty careful with protection, but one time in the shower, I didn't use it, and this is when S became pregnant. He says, I know, smack. Yeah, smack. A few minutes of fun in the shower, what can go wrong could lead to 18 years or more of a responsibility and payments. Is it worth it? No. Always wear protection and dispose that protection. But he didn't know. Look what happens. I was 31 when this happened and wanted kids, so I was happy when she told me that she was expecting. S had a full-time job and was living in her own place. She was earning more than me at the time because I was just studying. And he says, Chapter 2, Alpha settles down. We moved out of our respective apartments and rented a house together. Smack. Bro, would you have gotten that serious with her and moved in there with her this quickly if she wasn't pregnant? No. Now, I know we're dealing with younger you here, but still, the point is, the problem is that guys, it's the old school idea, and I know we're going back to the 90s, and I know this is a different country, so I'm taking that into consideration here. The old school mindset was, guy gets girl pregnant, even though it takes two to tango, he marries her. Done. End of story. Well, that leads to pretty much very miserable marriages, and I'm sure there are exceptions out there, of course, grandparents and godfather and godmother, or even your parents, but generally speaking, that rushed to the shotgun wedding and all that, not a good idea for two people that maybe just been casually dating and hooking up. And all of a sudden now they're going to be husband and wife. There could be a whole lot of problems. Resentment, nothing in common, they don't really know each other too well, and now moving in together, and you're going to see, guys, where this goes. It would have been, if it was nowadays, and we were here in the US of A, I'd simply say, look, make sure that child's yours, paternity test, and then if it is yours, obviously pay for it and all that to help the child, but get married and all that, bad idea. I dropped back to part-time studies so that I could pick up some extra work. Instead of finishing my degree in 1 year, I stretched it out over 2 years. Our daughter was born the following year, and being a dad for the first time was pretty daunting. I had no idea what I was doing, but muddled through well enough. After a few months, S went back to work while I juggled babysitting, part-time study, and part-time work. I started postgraduate study but dropped out after 6 months because we needed some more money. So I started looking for a full-time job while continuing to pick up part-time work. You are doing what you have to do, and that's really good. You're taking care of your kid, you're studying, you're on your grind with the job, you're doing what you got to do for your family. Putting aside the rushing into this and being with her even just because she's pregnant, okay, fine, but you're still doing what you got to do. That's what a man does. The following year, our landlord decided to sell our house and kicked us out so he could do renovations. I said, screw this, I'm not renting anymore. I sold my investment property and used it as a down payment on a cheap house in the country. A couple weeks before we were due to move, he called us and said that he changed his mind and we could stay. A bit bloody late now, I replied. We moved out 2 weeks later. Even today, I still regret selling my investment property, but my income at the time wouldn't let me get the mortgage in any other way. When your family is in need, the man has to make it happen. Yes, exactly. And men can't make things happen unless they were raised by strong men to set an example of how to make things happen and be self-reliant, take charge, get the job done, things like that. A woman raising a boy alone can do so much, and she can certainly turn into be a nice guy, and work hard and all that, but she's not going to teach him everything he needs to know. A masculine presence is crucial. He says, country life was great. Our house was on a huge block of land. We had friendly neighbors and a lot of outdoor activities. Both of us were driving back into the city for work. It was 75 kilometers each way, so we were driving 150 kilometers each day. Holy shit, that's a lot of driving, brother. We would take it in turns to stay home and look after our daughter. After a couple of years, my daughter started school, and S was pregnant again. Oh, Lord, another one. Now I stepped up my research for a full-time job because S would not be working after giving birth. Just after our second daughter was born, I found full-time work as a salesman with a large electrical retailer. He says, not what I wanted, but I need a job in a hurry. Again, you had to do what you had to do for your family. The money was pretty good, and S quit her job to stay at home as a full-time mom. We talked about marriage, but never went through with it. It doesn't matter in Australia because we have common law, de facto marriage. Okay, I missed something, so you at least weren't married to her then. But still, I mean, you have to live with her and all that. But again, these are different times, different country, and I'm trying to take that into consideration. Nowadays, in the 2020s, there are other options. Another year or so, I got well and truly sick of driving for 2 hours each day, so I decided to sell the house and move back to the city. I never really gave S a choice in the matter. She was going to get a better house and be closer to her family, so she seemed happy with my decision. We picked a house that was within walking distance to work in the mall and across the road from the school. I reasoned that if we had money problems in the future, we could sell the car and still be okay. Our garden wasn't as large as our old house, but it was still pretty big. Plenty of scope for lots of projects. One thing that surprised me was I actually found a use for my history degree. One of my side jobs was a technical editor for some military authors. A publisher noticed my work and asked if I wanted to write a book. I said that there were no decent textbooks on Bronze Age military equipment, so they paid me to write one. Most online booksellers have it in their catalog. If anyone's interested, I can send a link. Wow, that's pretty cool, man. Anyhow, work was going well and I was making more money. Our son was born a few years later, and now we had 3 kids. During this time, I was grinding hard. All of our money was going towards the mortgage. There were a few luxuries, crappy car, cheap vacations. I paid off our 25-year mortgage in 11 years, which isn't easy in a single-income family. It requires discipline and sacrifice. Wow. So even though you settled and all that for the wrong reasons, you're doing what you got to do, and I respect that, but you're still in your grind taking care of your family. But real soon you're going to see, guys, he goes off that grind. When that final payment was made and we got the deed to our house, a huge weight was lifted off my shoulders. I finally felt secure. Chapter 3, Alpha becomes Beta. Because now he feels secure, so he can kick back and not have to be on the grind anymore, and watch how this impacts his marriage or his relationship, her attraction for him, himself as a man, all that. He says, paying off the mortgage meant that we had more money to spend on other things. S was talking about getting a job since all the kids were at school, so our future was looking pretty bright. Now we had a good income, good house, a nice car, no debt, a frugal but comfortable lifestyle, some investments, and a hefty savings account. All the kids were healthy and happy. We were slowly renovating the house, and I was enjoying working in the garden, making things for the house, and doing some landscaping. I'm not sure that I was happy, but I was content with my life. I was working out the way it had planned, or out the way I had planned it. There are 2 ways to get ahead financially. You can either increase your income or you can decrease your expenses. I was fast approaching 50 years old and realized that my income was starting to plateau. But you can still get ahead if you reduce your expenses. The first thing I did was plant some vegetable gardens and fruit trees. This reduced our grocery bills by a couple of $1,000s a year, and we ate more healthily. Then I installed solar hot water and solar power for the house. This cut our electrical bills by around $3,000 a year. Reducing your outgoings by $5,000 per year is the same as increasing your income by about $8,000 a year after taking tax and work expenses into account. Then I replaced all the lighting with LEDs and bought some storage batteries, which virtually eliminated our electricity bills completely. Very resourceful, man. Good idea. But still, even though that you earned the right to take it easy now, and don't get me wrong, you've earned that right, you're still not on the grind anymore like you were when you were younger. And watch the kind of impact this has on the relationship with her. As absurd as it is, but watch what happens. A year or so later, the grind at work had burnt me out, so I dropped back to part-time. We had plenty of money, and I expected S to find a job pretty quickly, but she didn't. She got fat and lazy, living off my back, and never tried too hard to find work. Oh, isn't that nice? You've been busting your butt all these years. You want to scale back, but she doesn't want to do anything, and she let herself go physically. How many times have guys been in situations like this? And it's funny, but if a guy lets himself go in terms of like the job department and being on the grind, then he's the bad guy, But if a gal beefs up to be the size of the Goodyear blimp and looks like a hippopotamus, well, then guys are supposed to just accept that. Yeah, sure. She got fat and lazy, living off my back, blah, 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 never tried to find work. She spent most of the day on her fat ass reading books and playing on her phone. She barely did any housework and only cooked pre-packaged, frozen rubbish meals. The healthy food that I was growing in the garden was being wasted, so I stopped tending to it. Sounds like she was probably very unhappy and miserable and no purpose, nothing going on in life, and bored. So she just let herself go and get fat, ate garbage, all that. Great life. And unfortunately, it rubbed off on you and your relationship with her and all that. She mentioned losing weight a few times, and I offered to help her if she was serious. She wasn't. I lost attraction to her, and we stopped having you-know-what. Why should she get to have you-know-what with someone who was in shape and kept fit and not me? I ended up resenting her and started to do my own thing. This is when we lived as roommates, taking care of the daily chores, but nothing more. I had too much self-respect to cheat on her, and I don't think she cheated on me, but I really don't care if she did. I mentally checked out at this point. So all these years, you doing what you had to do for your family, busting your butt, you got together with her for the wrong reasons, and how are you thanked? She stopped giving a shit. She stopped trying, got fat and all that, and I wouldn't worry about her cheating on you if she's a giant freaking hippopotamus. And obviously the treatment of you was like, I knew that was over when I turned 50. I didn't get a birthday present, nor card, not even a happy birthday from S or any of the kids. Not even the kids. It's terrible, man. It was as if I never existed, and it cut me deeply. 2 decades of my life wasted on these self-centered ingrates. The easy life we had was now due to the plan I devised decades ago. I never deviated from that plan, and we are now reaping the benefits. But it was all taken for granted. I ended up going to my dad's and had a nice birthday dinner with him, his partner, and my brothers. As a present, my dad bought some tickets for my family to go on a cruise. I gratefully accepted, thinking that it might help rejuvenate our relationship, but nope, it was a disappointment. This is how a lot of marriages end up going in that direction. It is really sad. This is one of the reasons why I think marriages or some of these long-term relationships where even if they're technically not married, with a state involved, common law marriage, it doesn't work. And this is when things start going south after you may have tried, you just walk away. Now, obviously, you can't just walk away when you have kids, but you know what I mean by you take actions to eventually walk away, move on, start over. Why be miserable? Life is too freaking short. But you can see here, even though he did what he had to do for his family, he wasn't the same guy that he was when he was younger. And obviously, when you have kids and responsibilities, you can't be going to martial arts tournaments in Korea and all that. That's not what I mean. I mean other areas to be on the grind. But he admitted he was tired of working, so he stopped being on his grind, and he knows the impact it had. He wasn't the same guy. But you know what? She was a bum too, so, A few months later, I set up a workshop and started a side hustle, turning one of my hobbies into a little extra cash. Back on the grind. Good. It was more for relaxation than for money. S complained about the mess, but I didn't give a crap. I wanted to do something for me for a change, and I responded with, "This is helping to pay the bills. Go get a job and we can talk." I started to work on a few different escape plans and squirreled away some cash. Then she finally found a job. About bloody time, it only took 6 years. So I put my plans to leave on hold to see if anything would change. I know, smack. Yeah, smack. You should have trusted your guts and left and ended it. You obviously can't just walk away that day, but make plans because you said you were already squirreling some money away and figuring out your escape plan. Now listen to this. I waited around 6 months and nothing had changed, so I started thinking about leaving again. Then after coming home from work on the Saturday before Easter, the house was quiet. I went to the kids' room to say that I was home, but they were empty. Everything had been cleared out of the house except for the beds. Then I found the note. It said that S had found a house to rent and she had taken the kids. There you go. Now I know what she did with all the money she was earning from that job. When you're with a woman, never forget that what she earns is hers and what you earn is ours. When I read the note, I felt devastated and relieved at the same time. It was finally over. Yes. Look at it as a blessing. You're free. Okay? And definitely one of your kids is now legal adult. I don't know about the second one, but there you go. You could see, guys, it's just down the drain. And why did he get into this whole relationship to begin with? Because he got her pregnant. When simply, I think there have been other options, at least nowadays. Don't rush in to marry some chick or get that serious that you're almost like you're married and move in with her and all that just because she's pregnant, okay? If it is your kid after some tests, okay, you're responsible, but it doesn't mean you got to be married to her and do all that. Look at that. What happened? But also pointing out that he was off his grind. He stopped being the same guy he was when he was younger, and he knows this. Chapter 4 and finale, the Alpha Redemption. Now we're on to the good stuff for you guys that stayed this long. He says, so that's it. I'm now 53 and it has been a year since she left. The separation has been amicable and we talk about it civilly. I mentally recovered through it to start the court proceedings to finalize this relationship. I'm going to have to take out a new mortgage to pay S for her share of the house and our other investments, but I expect to have it paid off in around 5 years. After that, I'm in the clear except for child support, which I don't resent paying. My oldest daughter, now 20 years old, hasn't said a word to me since I left. I sometimes see my youngest daughter, who's now 16, but not often. My son, now 12 years old, stays with me every other weekend. I'm trying to teach him how to be a man and undo the damage of all that female household that is inflicting on him. He is doing most of the cooking when he stays with me. I teach him something new to cook each time he visits. I started letting him drive the car a little bit, only on private property. Last week I showed him how to use the lawnmower and he mowed the backyard with me. Not very well, but he's only 12. I told him he did a great job and mowed it again, and after that went back home. Good. You're teaching him. That's what a father needs to be there for. And like you said, he's now around women all the time. Okay, so he needs that masculine presence as much as he can. Everything. tools, power tools, mowing the yard, learning to drive, all that stuff. And eventually martial arts, all these other things, setting a good example, all that. And now that you're going back to being the man you were, but deep down always was, he's going to see that and it will observe that and will help him. And by the way, why in God's green earth is your oldest daughter not talking to you? You didn't do anything wrong. I don't know the whole story here, but it sounds like maybe your ex put a lot of shit in her head. You were a dad who did what he could, worked hard, provided for the family, and they're not talking to you? What the hell? Additionally, I started training in martial arts and I'm getting back into serious shape myself. Awesome. You're 53, but doesn't mean it's over. A good friend of mine and client who watches my channel regularly, he's 54, and this guy trains me twice a week. He's in fantastic shape, eats well, does well for himself, all that. So it doesn't stop. You can do this, guys. For you guys that are older and feel like it's over, bullshit. There's still time. You can still do things with yourself in your life. You can find a new purpose, and new goals, new ways to better yourself, better shape, all that. It can be done. My self-discipline over the last couple decades was sufficient to keep from getting fat, but I grew soft. Time to harden back up like I was 20 years ago. Your videos have inspired me to start running again, and I'm feeling good. Some of the girls at work have recently commented on my shape, so it must be working. No more beta simping for me. Alpha hookups only, when I have time. Don't let women distract you from your purpose. Yes, women can be the biggest distraction for guys from their purpose because they get so obsessed of chasing the pee. When the interesting thing is when a guy's on his purpose, on his grind, making things happen for himself, being different in that regard, the pee starts chasing you. End of story. He'll be falling down from the sky. But a lot of guys don't get this, so they spend all their time chasing after girls, chasing ass, getting some, when they waste perfectly good time and energy when they could be improving themselves and bettering their lives. Now, I always say I want you guys to do this for yourselves, to better your lives and all that, not to get girls, but for yourself. But as a benefit, they're going to notice. Absolutely. But my friend, be careful. Don't make the same mistake you did when you were younger. Wear that freaking protection when you're having your hookups and everything. For God's sakes, I don't want the same thing to happen again. If it happens again, I'm going to slap the shit out of you when I finally eventually go visit Australia one day. Be careful. But everything else you're doing is awesome. He says, by the end, S and I were both ready to leave, but I struggled to work out where it started to go downhill. After watching some of your videos, I worked it out. It was when we paid off the mortgage and I stopped grinding so hard. I dropped back to part-time work so I could spend more time at home, and this is when she started to lose respect for me. Her hypergamy kicked in when she realized I lost my ambition and she wasn't going to get any out of me anymore. But we were comfortable. Life was good. I wanted to sit back and enjoy an easier life without the daily grind. I'm still doing that, but I have nobody to share it with, which is a shame. Yeah, it's ridiculous. After you busting your butt for all that time doing what you had to do, so you then kick back and relax a little bit, she loses interest. But that's how the hypergamy, that's how it works, okay? Now, it doesn't mean that all are like this, but let me tell you, women are attracted to driven, ambitious guys that make things happen. That's why you gotta be that way anyway, guys, no matter what, okay? Because a lot of people, most people in life, my experience here, they simply exist. They don't live. Okay, and there's a big difference. And sure, lots of circumstances could cause people to pretty much just do what they got to do to survive throughout life. And I understand that. But in my opinion, everybody can do something to make their lives a little bit better. It's going to take extra work, extra studying, all these different things, but it can be done. And just that little bit of improvement can lead to more improvement. And I know there are setbacks in lives because of responsibilities, maybe where you live, maybe physical problems, mental problems, I don't know what. But things can be done. And at the end of the day, it is what it is, how women are about in terms of attraction. Not cool, but there you go. And besides, now she's a fat lard ass, and who's going to want her? So you're on your own, you're free. He says here, I don't believe in professional therapy, but writing everything down is proven to be therapeutic, so this is another thing to thank you for. I hope your listeners can learn some lessons from the old beaten down fighter who's decided to get back in the ring for another round. I like that. If I can answer any questions or if you want an update, shoot me an email and I'll get back to you. You are a man, so walk tall. Look the world in the eye. Don't let anyone distract you from your purpose. Keep spreading the word. Well, I fully intend to. And he says, P.S. Many say that women are only after the top 10 to 15% of males. But if you look at men who have all the sixes, 6-figure salary, 6 feet tall, and so on, it's actually a lot lower than that. Around 24% of men in the U.S. earn over $100,000 a year. Around 15% of men in the U.S. are over 6 feet tall. Around 21% of men in the U.S. regularly go to the gym or participate in sports. Around 15% of men have a larger you-know-what than 6 inches. The percentage of men who meet all 4 criteria is about 0.1%, or 1 in 1,000. I don't know about those numbers, but I'm pretty sure that it's kind of close to that. But yet they all want those guys with all those 6s. Good freaking luck. He says, also, I looked at the Bible passage that you mentioned in a couple of videos, which is, better to live in a corner of the roof than to share a house with a quarrelsome wife. Proverbs 21:9. Well, brother, that was a great story. Long, but it was a good one here. But to show you guys that a guy can start off in life doing great on his grind, on his purpose, but one screw up and making the wrong decisions can just... he did what he had to do, and I respect that, but eventually, as he admits, he settled for the wrong reasons, went off his grind, stopped being the same guy he once was, and look at the impact it had on both him, the attraction to the wife, all that. But now, the best thing that ever happened to you is when she left. I mean, you were going to do it anyway, but then, hey, she left, and now you got your second chance. My recommendation is keep on your grind, keep finding new things to learn, to better yourself in some way. Another purpose for you is making your son to be a very strong man, the man you were when you were younger, and the man you are again. And he can learn from your mistakes, because we all make mistakes, and go from there. And it doesn't stop. I want you to be on your grind, on your purpose, improving yourself, learning new things, now to the day you die. That your final thought when you're about to go to the great beyond is like, hey, I lived. I made things happen for myself, did a lot of great things, and I'm proud, I'm happy. The end. Off to heaven. All right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.